Hey everyone, it is Brian, your horsefly in the boardroom, and welcome to another episode of The Buzz, where we try to separate the truth from the hype in the workplace. In case you're new to my channel, I post a new one of these every Tuesday and Thursday, so if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a single episode. And what an episode we have for you today, because we are going to talk about assholes at work. Never thought that I would use that term, but there we go. What really got me thinking about this was I read a book by a professor that is called The No Asshole Rule. The professor is Robert I. Sutton. And he argued that, believe it or not, we should get rid of assholes at work. So let's talk a little bit about that. I think we all either have seen or know or heard of people that are just jerks, right? They're bullies, they're mean, they're threatening. And the first question that comes to mind is, why does a company let them exist? Now, to be fair, there are plenty of companies that do take action and make sure that they're addressed appropriately and they address that behavior. And if it's a continuing thing, they don't end up employed. But we also know plenty of places, too many, unfortunately, where those assholes are continued to allow to exist and function. And, for people who just want to come in and do a good job, they scratch their head. They're like, why is this even happening? And unfortunately, what I've seen a lot of times is the argument goes something like this. Well, they really are a high performer. They know how to deliver, and sure, they have some of the downsides. They're not touchy-feely. They're not always good with people, but their performance is worth the offset in what their behavior is. Well, this book that I mentioned, The No Asshole Rule, actually takes that head on and says, wait a minute, that may not actually be true. And so Robert Sutton, when he was looking into this, he found out, no surprise, that employees who are exposed to people like this, they report lower job satisfaction, much higher stress, and increased turnover intentions. So think about that for a second. Is it worth keeping the one person who's a complete jerk but maybe does technically know how to do something really well, at the risk of many other people that are saying, look, if this person is going to be here and continue to exist and they seem to like him because he gets kudos for what he can deliver, well, then I'm not going to stick around. And furthermore, Sutton says, these organizations, they suffer very measurable losses, reduced team performance, higher absenteeism, extra HR or management time spent dealing with toxic behavior. And I think we've all seen that before, right? Where a manager spends 90% of his time on 10% of the people that act like idiots instead of the other word. And interestingly, Sutton says what we should be doing is creating a metric. We all know that businesses thrive on metrics. They like to measure things and see, how we're doing towards that metric. And his metric is the total cost of assholes, TCA. And in that, he says firms should account for lost productivity, recruitment and training costs, the legal exposure that's involved, and managerial overhead. And that if we did a good job of measuring TCA, we would do a better job at addressing those people who are, in fact, assholes at work. So beyond Sutton, are there any other studies that have looked into this that might actually back up what he's saying? Because again, we're looking for the truth and not the hype. And we've all seen plenty of books that come out touting a specific thing, thought, process, whatever, and maybe not proven out. In this particular case, there are at least 3 different studies that I'm aware of that have been done that backed up 100% what Sutton was saying. One, in the year 2000, Bennett Tepper did a study of 712 employees and was able to link abusive supervision to lower employee morale, higher intent to quit, and poorer health outcomes. One study in the UK actually was able to use survey data to quantify TCA. Remember, that's the total cost of assholes. To show that even a small proportion of assholes in the workplace can generate outsized financial losses for a firm. And then the last one, Robert Cialdini, also did a study into it and found basically the same thing, that a single asshole at work does in fact generate outsized negative consequences in the organization. So what do you do about it, right? So, okay, so we have let's say we implement the TCA metric. And the first thing that you should do is implement a written no asshole rule. Now, admittedly, most places are not actually going to call it a no asshole policy, but the basic idea behind that policy would be to reduce the incidence of bullying behaviors, create a higher perceived fairness and trust in leadership, and then create an improved overall team environment. So basically, the policy should say we don't allow that sort of behavior. We're going to address that sort of behavior, and failure to correct that sort of behavior may result in you losing your job. Following that, as Sutton looked at, well, what happens if you do in fact implement that sort of policy? They noticed that it works. You get an improved overall team climate, which is what you would expect. But they also noticed, some scholars did, not Sutton in particular, that the strict zero tolerance stance can backfire if you apply it inconsistently, which makes sense. Consistency is the key word here. So if you apply it against those two, but you leave the one big one that everybody knows, well, you're not going to get the result that you think. So in order for that policy to work, you should have, number one, transparent criteria. Number two, consistent enforcement across all levels. And number three, opportunities for remediation, or in other words, coaching, behavioral contracts before you get to termination. The overall point is to try to get everybody to be a productive member of the team, and you don't just want to, no warning, fire them and get them out, right? So you want to give some sort of support before you do fire them. So again, no assholes at work. It actually does have a positive benefit. It takes a little bit of work to get there, but it's a positive policy, and I hope your workforce implements something like it. Thanks a lot. Please make sure to leave your comments. Look forward to seeing you at our next session.